We're here in Copenhagen at Way Up North with Sam Hurd, who you may know from the internet. If not, check him out on Instagram right now. Well, keep watching this video. Check out Instagram after this video. Please. And we're going to be talking about something that I find to be very personally interesting, and it is how, if you had to go back to square one with your wedding photography business, how would you begin the process to get back to where you're at now? I feel like it's a massive loaded question, and I think it would be a great conversation.
Just before we started, I was mentioning how it's tough. I can only guess, give you my best guesstimate of how I would approach that, because I'm a different age now. I'm 12 years older than when I started. The market and the landscape, and I mean, when I started, Facebook business pages were the shit. That was where to go if you wanted to like explode and reach people, and you know, that's just not the case now.
Yeah.
Do you still post on a business page occasionally?
I feel like the business page, so there's always kind of that one hot thing. I feel like right now, at least speaking in this exact moment, I feel like TikTok has that organic reach. So if you're making TikTok content, it's very difficult to convert TikTok content into actual real sales.
Gotcha.
But I feel like that's the level of kind of accidental virality that business pages used to have. Like you post a great photo and it actually gets out there and you don't have to pay money.
To people that didn't necessarily follow you.
Yeah.
The reshare button was magic.
Yeah, exactly. So going back, you're buying a camera. What camera are you buying?
Today, starting out, it depends. If, you know, budget constraints are probably, you're a little more sensitive when you're starting out. So I would certainly go mirrorless, because that is, like, DSLRs are absolutely on the way out. They have their strengths in some ways, but I would probably go the Canon EOS R, like a used one. Absolutely full frame if you can manage it. I know a lot of people like Fuji stuff, which is good, but I really prefer the look and character of full frame. Just the way it renders is different, no matter what. Yeah. So, you know, if you're budget constrained, EOS R, even the RP. I mean, obviously Sony, I've lost count of how many cameras they have now. I just can't keep track. I used to buy, Sony was like the first serious entrant to the mirrorless world, and I kept trying to switch, but Sony was late with their lenses. They've caught up now, but they iterate so much, I can't keep track. So I'm sure there's a competitor for Sony, but you know, something that's full frame, solid edge-to-edge autofocus, and for me, surprisingly, one of the most critical features in my process now is having a screen that articulates,
interesting.
You know, folds out and articulates up and down, not just in one direction. That is critical. I shoot 95% looking at my little flippy screen and not through the viewfinder anymore.
I just sold, or I guess I didn't sell, I gave one of my R6s to my wife, Lindsay, and she held it up to her face and she's like, why doesn't the viewfinder turn on? And it's because I've literally disabled the viewfinder because I shoot everything. Wedding day, also I guess as far as kind of masks in Canada, when you're wearing a mask and you're breathing, it just fogs up your viewfinder so you can't even really use it.
That's a really good point.
So I've shot the past, at least since the R6 came out and kind of became, it's mostly my main camera now. It's just been on the
That is my main camera
screen.
too. Yeah, if you're not budget constrained, R6. I'm waiting on the R3 to ship. I just got a notification this morning that it's still on back order, so that's fine. But you know, I do remember a time when I started using live view with the Nikon D4.
You were the first person at your workshop a bunch of years ago. You were like, I shoot live view, and I'm like, what? Yeah. Somebody shoots live, like. Okay.
And I used to feel really self-conscious being the photographer, like looking at the back of my screen, not just checking my photo, but the entire time looking at the back of my screen as I'm shooting. And I used to be just very sensitive to how people were perceiving me, and you know, it's just not what you're supposed to do. But now, nobody gives it a thought. In fact, people let their guard down even more because they think I'm just taking video. So they don't seize up for the cheesy smile or whatever. They just kind of let it go, which is a great advantage. So that would be the camera approach. If you can manage two cameras, like especially if you're going to focus on weddings, like you really do need a solid backup. And then I am loving, not to sound too much like a Canon shill, but the 50 1.8, 35 1.8, and the 16 2.8. I think those are the only ones. They're like the silver ringed lens, RF lenses.
Inexpensive, like
super cheap.
Wildly inexpensive for how good quality it is.
I was driving to an elopement and realized all I had with me was a 24 millimeter and a 135. I was like, oh God, my bread and butter is 50. I didn't bring it. And there are no camera stores anymore. So I was Googling and I was like, does Best Buy maybe have something? And they did. They had the entire series of RF, like the silver ring And so I was able to swing by Best Buy, pick up a 51.8, and that was the first time I shot like an entire shoot in its entirety with one of those lenses instead of just throwing it on because I was tired of the weight of 1.2 lenses. They're amazing. So that's the direction I would start with for sure.
It's to go back to my wife Lindsay as the example again. She was so sick of, as of 6 months ago, as of like 3 weeks ago actually, she's still shooting a D850 as a main. And with like the big 24 to 70, like it's just so heavy. And then the new kit is just the R6 and that 50 1.8, and it's tiny.
Featherweight. It's amazing.
Like people are so much more relaxed, I find, around cameras, like that, especially having so much trust in the autofocus system, the fact that you can just kind of like point it roughly and you kind of see your frame and you can still be interacting with people, and you can get your camera to the exact level you want if they're seated. Like you can be at a wedding, you could just be walking around a table and just be like grabbing individual candids as you go around, and it just works. So
it really does, and you can actually pair it. I find if you're in an area that you can use direct flash, like a reception where it's low light, or bounce flash up over your shoulder, the little Canon, it's like the EF-2, they make this tiny little flash that I will pair with the R6 and the 50 1.8 or the 35 1.8, and it's literally like it's small. It's like the size of my wallet. This flash, and it's super light. It takes 2 AA batteries, and no, you can't shoot full like 8 frames per second or whatever the max is on the R6, but 2 or 3 frames per second, it flies, and the batteries have lasted me entire receptions as long as you're not competing with too much bright light anywhere else. It's really easy on the wrists.
How often? So I have found since switching that I very rarely use a flash. I would say one in every 5 weddings. I'm now in a place that it's usually quality of light. It's not intensity of light, that you can shoot in the dark essentially. How often do you use a flash? I'm
pretty often. Okay. I love the look of bounce flash. I mean, it looks like I'm just carrying around a giant octabank behind me. It's like impossibly beautiful and flattering. So assuming the venue and the couple and the vibe is the right fit for that super clean look, I tend to roll that way, just bounce flash. But if it's an outdoor reception on like a farm or a little bit more rustic vibe, or maybe a beach, I've been rolling with just an LED light in my left hand, not mounted to the camera, because I want a little of that angular shadow. LED with one hand, shooting with my right hand, and I just kind of walk around like this all day. Also excellent with sparkler exits, although normally the sparklers are bright enough. It can augment and give you a little bit of fill light.
That's a good tip.
Yeah.
That's a really good tip.
Great. And in fact, I shot an entire workshop last week in London in a dark, it was a place called Bounce. It was a ping pong competition place, but it was super dark and lights from all different colors and directions. And I shot the entire thing with this little LED light, and some of my favorite work that I've done. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that feels like Marshall and I came from like a concert photography background. We used to have the flash on the string, and I feel like that's I feel very comfortable having something in both of my hands like that.
Yep.
So we talked about gear. Now moving into how would you get your portfolio up and running, or what would you do? You say you're a photographer, maybe you're doing some corporate headshots or you're doing some families or whatever, and you want to make the transition into weddings. How do you start presenting that?
Complete rebrand to something wedding specific for one, or maybe not entire. You can use similar color palettes or maybe even your logo, but definitely a completely separate site specifically for weddings, engagements, elopements, that kind of genre. And I would say very little crossover with all your corporate work. And it's tempting to think like, oh, I want to show that I do it all. Like I do this and I do it all really well, and that's fine. But no, people really want to see like what you specialize in and know that it's weddings if they're paying you a lot, especially when you're starting out. They want to know that you know what you're doing and you're focused. And I still believe having a very strong curated portfolio section with the word portfolio on your website is pretty key. I update mine maybe every year and a half or 2 at this point. It's not regularly updated at all, and I never point any traffic or links to it, but it is still it's probably the second most trafficked spot on my website from people that are just discovering me and clients checking out. Everyone knows conceptually what a portfolio is and what it means, and it's just so critical. And so many people just don't even bother. I'm still also a big believer in blogging. Just for me, kind of self-curating my work and thinking about on a slightly more regular basis and higher volume, my blog posts are like 20 images. twice a month I try and post. So that just kind of makes me feel out, where am I at? What do I want to project as like my style, most currently. My portfolio kind of does that. It's more like a global view of everything, and my blog is like, here I am right now. Yeah. And that also keeps your website a little more dynamic and stuff like that. So complete rebrand, portfolio, blog, and then the key thing for me that really helped in my early years was reviewing equipment, and I had no authority to say anything about my equipment.
No one does, you just start.
You just start. And people love, if you find your voice a bit in writing, and I prefer writing. I don't understand YouTube. I've tried making videos and stuff. I hate watching. It's so much more time to sit there and watch a YouTube video to try and like dive into the details of a product. It is, I think you do pick up in someone's tone and body language certain things you're not going to get from text, but text for me is just faster. I just want to get to the meat of whatever it is. So writing an article or whatever with some really pretty pictures and then some sample photos of what that product made, if it's a lens, whatever. Yeah. That paid off big time, not because I was getting sponsorships or anything from companies. It was because, one, it gained me authority with clients. Like, oh, this person's writing complicated reviews about lenses. He must know what he's doing. Two, photographers get married also. And if they fall in love with your work,
Also, Sam shot our wedding.
Yeah. So eventually they'll come back and keep up with your reviews, and hopefully if they like your work, eventually turn into actual clients. So that is a great window in, no matter how saturated it might seem. Not only is your work likely to be different than anybody else's, hopefully in some way, if you're at all trying, but your voice and your opinion and the little aspects of, this button doesn't work for me, or I hate that there's a click ring, but it doesn't have clicks. Like, oh man, I hate that with the 51.8. It's smooth. Yeah. The control ring is smooth. I hate it.
Just send it back to Canon, they'll fix it.
They did that for videographers, I guess, so that there wasn't any noise. But anyway, that is something that really, really bugs me, and somebody who's been following my work for a while might relate to that and be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, this guy gets it.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, new website. How are you building your portfolio? How do you get those first few photos?
That's a great question. Obviously, if you don't have any friends or family or access to Craigslist, which I'm assuming is still...
That's how I booked my first wedding.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's how Nessa booked hers, too. I had a coworker getting married. I was already working as a photographer, so never weddings, but she'd seen enough of that work that she trusted me, and they had a low budget, so it was a coworker.
You had some pretty high-profile individuals in your portfolio,
I think
you had a bit of a cheat code.
Yeah. Cheat code, that's a great way to put it, yeah. ABB, up, down. So if you have no resources in like your personal network of people getting married or whatever, there is the path of workshops with styled shoots, but I generally don't. Those will get you like the end result of like, here's a photo of a person in a wedding dress or whatever, but you're missing out on the actual capability of making that photo in the constraint of a wedding day. So you're setting yourself up for possible failure, I think a more likely failure, by only generating your portfolio from a styled shoot and then on the wedding day being like,
professional
oh crap,
models,
why doesn't anything look good? Yeah. Well, because a lot of weddings, there are areas that are probably going to look really nice, but you don't have a professional model. Your clients are looking at you probably their first time having photos since high school. It's a completely different ballgame. So I would opt for trending away from styled shoots and going more for second shooting, reaching out to, here's the thing. A lot of photographers reach out to somebody to say, like, hey, I'm so driven, I'm interested, I want a second shoot. They reach out once, I might reply, whatever, I'll keep you in mind. You have to be persistent. Don't be rude or like scary, but eventually my short list of people that I rely on are gonna all be busy, that one wedding I need. And if you've been persistent enough, surfacing in DMs or comments or engaging with my work enough, and I know that you wanna shoot with me at some point, that moment will come, and boom, you're in. And if it's a good experience, I have people back all the time. Yeah. So that's my personal approach to how I recommend people kind of push for second shooting. Don't just message somebody once and give up. Like, you've got to be persistent, but don't be scary either. Yeah,
and then to maybe add to that a little bit, message photographers in wedding season. I find that usually I don't know if it's January and we're in Canada, I don't have a whole lot of weddings coming up until May. I'm probably not going to be thinking too much about who I'm going to be hiring for that wedding season for each individual wedding. So if you're messaging in the wedding season, I feel like you're going to have a lot higher chance of actually booking a gig.
Totally. So that's, one way to start building a portfolio, or a few different ways to think about it, I suppose. I don't know. There's probably others. You could just
I just got
you
friends.
could just go like orbit around wedding venues and take really long telephoto
800.
lenses off from a distance.
I literally just asked friends. I was like, can we go for a shoot? And then it's easier, I think, in the beginning when you're working with friends because you have some sort of rapport. And then when you transition to working with your first couples that don't know you, it's, at least in my experience, super awkward. But I think that it's an important, you need to hit, you need that experience. If you just shoot styled shoots that people are setting up with professional models, your portfolio's gonna look amazing, but you're gonna have no idea, you haven't learned all the skills required, so.
Eventually you realize the awkwardness is just part of it. It just feels, and then you feel empowered, at least as a photographer, I do. I'm like, the awkwardness, this is just how it is. Yeah. So I'm already operating up here, and I'm trying to bring my couples up. Weird. I know it's going to be weird. That's why it's fun. Yeah. Once you get to that point, that you can embrace it instead of freaking out about it, which takes some time to get to.
No, I definitely agree.
That comes with experience. Yeah.
All right, so now you have some pictures in your portfolio. What are your suggestions to marketing as somebody that has not really found any traction yet?
Yeah.
Or what would be your first step for it?
Given the literal environment today, I suppose for actual wedding clients, it's tough because it's so much easier even once you've shot 2 weddings to really get it to snowball and grow, because you can start targeting venue names of the 2 places you went at and start targeting and optimizing your SEO in ways but when you're literally starting from nothing other than second shooting, I guess just Instagram and being kind of disciplined with tagging the other vendors that were involved in the wedding and stuff like that I came after all that stuff, so I've been horrible about it personally. But I'm tempted to say, obviously all the eyeballs are on TikTok right now and video content, but I don't think you have to go that route if you're passionate specifically about photography. It's a very different thing to make video content, and if you aren't driven, you don't have that burning desire, it will show through in your videos as well, even if it's about photography. That's what's happened for me, at least. I don't understand YouTube, and I don't like TikTok at all. I don't think you listened to my talk on AI, but TikTok is terrifying in what it's driving and what it's doing in its algorithm to show you what you want to see without having to, it's like reading your mind almost. It's crazy. One other thing you might want to consider with marketing is leaning into the established vendors on the planning side of things, the vendor side of things, venue side of things. Venues typically don't, some are better than others. Many of them don't have very up-to-date photos of that look really good of their property. So offering to shoot there, a lot of restaurants that they make the bulk of their money as a restaurant also do weddings sometimes. Yep. And so you can get access to a restaurant and do shoots for them that aren't necessarily wedding related, but kind of get you in the door of just circling that orbit of people that are going to maybe suggest you for a wedding that's going to be happening there. So you really need to up your kind of vendor relations a little bit. Yeah. I'm not a believer in sending them a bunch of free gift baskets or stuff to please work with me, I'll do anything. Don't beg, but just be a helpful resource for when they obviously need it in some way, whether it be actual photos or help with something else.
Yeah. But I feel like if you can identify something that people need, so for instance, venues, at least where we're at, multiple seasons, they have no marketing material for winter. So if you approach them and you're like, hey, can I do a shoot here? You guys can use the images for marketing, and we're going to do it in the winter. Most venues are going to be like, yeah, okay. We have literally none of that content. Yep. So there's easier ways in, as long as you're kind of thinking from what could be most helpful for the person that you're actually reaching out to. How did you build your pricing? Maybe that's
I started cheap. I had no confidence, so I charged, I think, $500, and I paid my second shooter $400. And I think that it was also his first wedding ever. So that was just to give you a gauge of my confidence level, even though the photos were great. They were fine. I was already working as a professional photographer, but I knew I didn't have the experience of weddings, and so it took me a while to build up. I mean, it was just a slow, you charge what You can. I mean, I started at 500, and then the next one a little bit more. I think around 750. I was around 1,800 for maybe 6 months, and then bumped up to about 2,800 for probably my entire second year.
That's weirdly exactly. I think I went to 25, but everything else was exactly my progression. That I hit that 1,800 number, and I'm like, I feel like I'm still a bit of a fraud. Like I shouldn't be charging more than this. So I literally like froze there.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
Well, and if you're younger too, that can feel like a lot of money.
Yeah.
And obviously as you get a little bit older, you realize like it's not that much. $1,800 for a wedding photographer. Like I paid my electrician like $900 to swap a freaking cable the other day. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but it's like this, in real life, it's not that much money. And a lot of times people are getting help on their wedding days. They're not paying. Some people pay for it all on their own, and everyone's different. But once you break that $2,000 barrier, actually, no, I think it's more the $3,000 barrier. Yeah. Then you're in the zone of like, okay, actually, I might be able to create something sustainable from this. However, I would say one big thing looking back, as far as money goes, always be thinking of ways to diversify your revenue streams. I mean, I guess we've probably talked about this before, maybe even in the last interview, but it has paid off big time for me with growing Patreon since like 2016. Having already had that sort of built out before COVID hit, saved my ass during COVID. And it's not something I ever could have specifically planned for. It's nice to just have more money in general, but it might be a time where that extra money is your main source of money for a little while. And, things kind of ebb and flow. And so always be thinking about extra ways that you can do things. Like I offer another online product that right for my wedding clients, if they want to keep their wedding gallery online past a year, so they have full access, download zip file, everything for a year. After that, I give them the option to keep it right there exactly how it is, $60 a year subscription. And my goal is to have like 1,000 clients by the time I retire paying $60 a year to keep their photos online.
That's how you retire as a photographer. That should have been the video. That's the video title. How to retire. I don't know if people would search for that, but that's a really interesting, like...
It is, because, their wedding gallery, they can download the photos, put it on their phone for free and be done, but their wedding gallery that keeps track of their favorites, where they've shared it with other friends and family, it has access to a print lab, it's the best place to experience their photos. And it's like separate from all their iPhone stuff, so it feels a little more special, and like this is where we go when we want to look at our images. It's worth $60 a year. Plus, they're never going to be lost that way or mixed up in some Dropbox transfer to Google Drive mess.
Well, we saw that with CDs, that everyone stored their images on CDs, and now CDs maybe work.
So I did USB keys when I started, and I'm starting to get people saying, "Hey, we lost it."
Or
we don't own a computer that has USB anymore, not the Type A.
Yeah.
And I say, I'm happy to. I'm going to $150 to re-upload your gallery because it's way on a hard drive somewhere now. It's going to take some time, and then here's the option: $60 a year. Keep it up indefinitely. So, always be thinking about that stuff, especially from your formative years. So,
all right. Well, I think that about wraps it up because it's starting to rain.
Yeah, we're very wet.
Go follow Sam on Instagram. Check out his Patreon.
Thanks, Taylor.
And that's all from Copenhagen here.
Awesome.
And drop any questions you have in the comments below, and we will do our best to get back to you. And that's all. See you next time.